Most people don't understand why it takes so long to do a frame drawing. I'm going to walk you through real quick what I have to do. To get the actual length of the tubing, I have to lay out all these marks, and then I have to draw out all my bend lines and do my calculations for the use of tubing. So what I have to do is line up a flat there, and here's a test bend that I use. This marks where the bend starts. So now on this tube I have to actually lay this part up against there, and it has to touch over here. And then once it touches over here, I can mark where I line up the tubing in the bender. So then that comes over to this part of the bender. Back over here. Once I do all that, I have to do that for every bend. Once I do that for every bend, I have to calculate my flat sections of straight tubing and everything like that. Then I have to calculate how much tubing is used in this bend with this calculation right here. Okay? So once I get all that, I can actually tell how much tubing I'm going to use. So let me walk over here to this tubing, and that's how I get the mark for the length of tubing that I need to make one frame rail. With that one frame rail, I have to do that for all 4 of the seat frames and for every bend. So this bend here, I just had to go through all those steps to do that. By the way, this is your lower rail piece, and here is your cross piece that goes up to it, and there are your axle blocks. I've got the tubing cut to length. You can see it's cut to length for the seat. I got to get this burr off here, so I just hit it real quick on the sanding disc. I'll take the burr off the edge and flatten this side out. That way I have good measurement points. The other side is already flattened out, as you can see. So that's it. So now we got the end chamfered and smoothed off both ends. And now I lay the tubing right up against there, get my mark here, measure back. That's the section that I'm really going to clean with some clean and strip wheels to get my measurements to show up really well. I just use an air-powered grinder with a 3M coral strip wheel, or a clean and strip wheel, or a coral wheel as we call it. They're about $15 a wheel. A wheel will last for two rails. I'm going to try and do this one-handed. That way I can kind of show you what you're looking at. So you get an idea. It doesn't take away any of the surface thickness of the metal, but it polishes the outside of the metal so that you can see it real well. So now I've got the area all cleaned up. You can see the surface finish from the mill to what I clean up. Now I take my ruler, I line it up there, come up with 10 and a half inches from that point to that point. So now put it there, measure out 10 and a half inches, and I'll mark my tubing right in here, and that'll be my first bend to go to the bender. Is I use split collars. I get them from MSC. As you can see, it's for 1 1/4 inch, and then I put them on there, and that's how I get my straights to go around the tube straight and perpendicular to the tubing. So now I'll mark with just a regular paint pen. I mark it, and then I'll come back with my scribe, and I'll actually designate my right on mark. Alright, so just so you know, all this shit's happening in real time. I'm actually videoing as I'm doing your seat rail. That's why you're getting so many segmented videos. As you can see here, these are my internal fork stop jigs, fixtures for my Kurt vise for the milling machine. I also use those as squares to line everything up. That line's on. Now I need to make another line here. That's where I'll actually line up my tubing in my bender. Then I'll have this line. So now I'll be able to actually measure everything out. And all I'm doing is lining up this on the leg of the drawing and putting the tubing against it. And then this tubing, or this square piece, I'll come back and I'll line up with that, and that'll give me my mark on my tubing. Alright, so now you can see I have that indelible marker right there. I use a Sharpie fine point, like that. And then what I'll do is I'll put my split collar back over that point, and I'll make my loop around and go from there. Alright, the last thing, as you can see, there's my marked line. The last thing I do before I'm ready to do my bend is I use a piece of angle iron and I put my tubing against it. And square up the end, and I'll put one control line down the center. And what that allows me to do is find top dead center, and then the three corresponding points, the bottom dead center and the left and right dead centers on the tubing for rotations. Alright? Now you can actually see my setup with the angle iron, the tubing to be marked, the square, another clamp back here, and then what I'll do is I'll use fine point Sharpie, and I'll come in and give myself one control line. And what that control line allows me to do is if I have to rotate this tubing left or right, I now have a 0 mark that I can line up in the bender. Alright, man, so this tube's now ready to bend. I've got, as you can see right there's the control line. That's the bend mark. That's the start of the bending die. And this tubing, all that bullshit just to get this tubing ready to bend. But now I am ready to bend, so take it easy. Digital readout, my JD Square bender, the hydraulic setup with the pump, it's an air over hydraulic, the degree plate, and then my stop ring with my stop light. So what happens is whenever it touches, it'll actually blink red. So that's what I'm working with to actually do your bends, and we're getting ready to do the bends here in a minute. Alright, so we've got the bender somewhat set up. I'm starting to slide the tube in. I sprayed some white lithium grease on the follower block to let that slide. Nothing goes on this die, on the rotary die, because we want it to hold the tube tight. That's where the bend will actually start. There's the black line that I need to line up with the front of this. So I'll get that all lined up. You can see the control line here needs to line up with the mark there. Alright, so now I've got the tube set up. I've got a penny in there because that pinches. It's a softer metal than this, so it doesn't mar the tubing, and it allows me to latch down on this. I've got the split collar on. As you can see, the control line lines up with the center mark of the die. Then right in here you have the mark for the beginning of die. And then if you look back in there, you can see the yellow mark for where the bend starts. So now all I got to do is hook up the air, hit the bender, zero everything out, and turn on the digital display and set my stop block. You can see my hydraulic ram sitting over there on the ground is just too short to catch the next hole to move for a longer throw, so I got to actually fabricate a piece. But as you can see, I did it by hand, ended up with 37 degrees. So now I've got to undo this, pull the little penny out, take this horseshoe off, and then I'll lay it against my template over there and hopefully it'll work. Now you can see it's all bent. It lines up with the template. Here you can see how much stretch is in the tube from where I marked it to where it actually ended up. So, and as you can see, back to manual. It occurred to me last night I did not send you a picture of the two seat rails, the old versus the new. As you can see, I have my square here, my square here. That lines up both tubes in the angle that they're supposed to be in. And you can see that they don't get much more even than that. Hold on one second here. There's that. As you can see, lineups. Have to shimmy that up a little bit. There we go. So, seat post, bend start, and you can see